Remember a simpler time? When in my previous video I said my what does concepts mean in K-pop was my best aged video on this channel? Yeah, scratch that. I don't think anything on this channel is aging like fine wine like my other very popular, very correct investigative journalism on bum-ass modhaus. I'm simply here to discuss the latest development of what's transpired, but if you haven't watched the original I highly suggest you do. I address the issues I have with modhaus from the perspective of a graphic designer and aspiring creative director, none of which have been rectified I will add. It was a piece detailing my growing disinterest in the company's poor artist development in terms of branding and concepts. Recently, things have not only gotten worse but has just proven all my previous reservations about the company in that video correct. Not too long ago, modhaus announced that NINI'S will have their long-awaited debut album Divine All Love and Live, which I will just say, is an awkward mouthful but still a lot better than recent titles. This reveal came with the NINI'S strategy, which laid out essentially the rollout of the album cycle. From the second I laid eyes on what is essentially just a scheduler, I began feeling weary again like previous times. On one hand, this is pretty and shows more design knowledge that modhaus seemed incompatible with up until this month. On the other hand, it's very plain. It feels like something a fan would come up with after googling some heart wireframe and slapping a few elements and text together. It still feels like it's lacking a personal style, something reflective of the group or even the album's concept, an issue that tends to plague modhaus work as I explained in my other video. However, I decided to stick around at least to see where the actual content will go direction-wise before I aired my personal grievances out again on the timeline. A true waste of time from where I'm sitting. The teasers that introduced us to Birth feels emblematic of the same issues I've been whining about concerning modhaus release after release. When Kim Lip's debut photos were done in assistance of a projector, it was endearing and spoke to the true grit of the team behind Luna. They had a vision but very little support and were making do with what they had. By time BBC reuses this technique again with Luna's hash, we had already grown tired of seeing it, and it was only the second time it had been utilized. Hash's photoshoot looks messy and not well prepared, the poses are off, the lighting is abysmal and styling clashes with every other moving part in the concept set. Hash happened in 2020 and I thought that would be the last time I would ever have to see the Moon Girls subjected to the rather boring technique, due to the very boring people who organized it. 2020 hindsight could not have even saved me from the possibility that jaden jeong would not only regain access to 5 of the girls since then but would have morphed into a smelly, crypto dork who only's purpose seems to be recycling the same ideas he's been doing for half a decade and hoping you have enough nostalgia to accept it with open arms. Projector photography is not a low art form, despite the fact that it could come off as such. It all depends on who is shooting. A skilled photographer will know how to utilize a projector to its full potential. A good example of this would be Koff's work with Kali Uki's or even Minheejin's work with FX's Pink Tape. A bad photographer, or one who simply lacks any personal style, will throw anything on the screen and begin snapping away in hopes that half the shots come off artsy. That's the only way I could describe how I perceive Birth's concept photos. This is insanely boring and borderline cheap. There's nothing clever about the use of the projector in these shots, so why even implement it? Had these faces not been attached to these photos, ask yourself if you would genuinely care or even be impressed by them. My answer of course is no, which is hilarious because I do care about the faces in these pictures and I still literally don't care. Kim Lip's picture offers the only actual interesting shot of the bunch, her ginger hair popping nicely against the vibrant blue background, but other than that, Snorfest. When Kim Lip did this same exact thing years ago, it was much better. How do you as a company manage to put out the same quality that your former employer did when you claim that your company centers art and stories rather than chase numbers and fame? Interesting. Needless to say, I haven't been moved. The hair and clothes stylists save what could have been very underwhelming at the very least, giving the girls this very posh art angels look reflective of a cross between Luna 1/3 style and eye circles. Very clever. The blonde hair reminds of Red Velvet's debut era, of course, a decision that I'm always very pleased to see newer groups adopt as well. Their hair being dyed also sends me back to when I was in orbit and remembering how we'd theorize where the story was going based on the girls' hair colors that would match up with the pre-debut timeline. It's not all a lost hope, but once again, it does play a lot on your sense of nostalgia for an era already long gone. As I'm typing this, the music video has yet to be released, but from the teaser shown I think my previous sentence will sum up the description of the music video. No, the real reason I'm adding this little update is to address Jaden Jeong's stupidity, because while our eyes cannot believe how low he stoops, I already predicted this would have happened. It was never going to just stop at NFTs, and anyone who is even remotely aware of how the Web 3.0 grift works, would know that it's a package deal. NFTs only exist to shill crypto. It was never about the art, and it's unsurprising that a company whose business model relies so heavily on it would dabble in the use of AI. For the uninformed, Modhaus began to release promotional images pertaining to the tracks of doll using AI art. I'm not including these in my video as I honestly don't even want that shit on my computer. If you want to see those abominations, go on their Twitter. This immediately sparked backlash between both international and Korean fans alike, thankfully, but despite that, Modhaus continued to post the AI art all the way up until today, March 25th, when Jaden finally spoke out. According to Jaden, this entire thing was actually a critique of AI and not an endorsement of it. The art direction was meant to be meta, releasing AI art in the first initial round of the rollout only to proceed forward with actual drawn images, which would serve as a plot twist of sorts. Due to the backlash, he says that they decided to have revealed this plan so fans would be made aware of their intentions, and they will not be continuing to post the AI images moving forward. He also makes it very clear that no AI images are in the actual packaging of the album as well. Perfect response, right? Maybe if you were 10, yeah. This is such a laughably bad statement I don't even know where to begin, but I do want to start with some of Orbit's reactions to the use of AI and why it speaks to a larger issue that I've continued to have with my Loon family. Throughout it all, I kept seeing this sentiment shared that Jaden at one point in time actually cared about artists because of the work displayed throughout Luna's pre-debut cycle. About how confusing it is that a man so creative would stoop low enough to dabble in AI for the art direction of a project. I'm saying this in the nicest way possible. If you still genuinely think half of what made Luna look genuinely good had anything to do with Jaden, you might just be a stan of him, rather than the actual girls or just an enjoyer of art in general. The smartest thing Jaden has ever done is surround himself with actually creative people. He himself has not 1 ounce of creativity within him. Oh, you really loved Luna's photos from their subunits? Great. You're an enjoyer of Mugung's work, not Jaden or any vision he had. You really loved Luna's music videos? You're a fan of Digipodi's production then, not Jaden. Oh, you really liked the art that Luna had on their Cinema Theory and debut showcase tickets? Yeah, thank the artist for their art style. I don't think people comprehend how much of Luna only worked because of the artist's own personal style and craft and not really Jaden. Having an idea is one thing, but without half of the original Luna team to execute it, Luna would look a hot fucking mess. We see that now with everything that comes out of Modhaus. It would have looked uninspired, bland, amateur. Too many Orbits have attributed the best parts of Luna to a man who did very little other than being overly critical to those he contracted to work. This doesn't mean he was useless. I do believe Jaden had some really unique ideas during the initial creation of Luna, but he is in no way the Renaissance man that Orbits continue to imply that he either is or once was. Anybody could come up with an idea. It takes talent and skill to make the execution work, and Jaden does not have that whatsoever. Not to mention, a lot of Orbits seem to forget that the Luniverse was only made so amazing by their own analysis and ideas. Anybody who actually goes back and looks at half of what Jaden did with Luna would realize that he was actually terrible at planning ahead, and a lot of the ideas are messy, unfinished, and have poor writing. If it wasn't for Orbits who came in to make sense of half the art direction, people would see the Luniverse the way they look at SM's failed cinematic universe. Jaden reminds me a lot of Son Levinson, another man held highly in his industry despite being relatively terrible at his job. He's inspired by things, has ideas, but he isn't good enough to expand on these ideas by himself whatsoever. This results in very poor writing and execution, and in return, instead of seeing that, Fans of Euphoria and The Idol would intellectualize these decisions as some grander message than call a spade a spade. New Kim, creative director of Listrofim, also gives me this same exact feeling. There's a sense of pseudo-intellectualism with the three of them that makes perceiving their work very grating once you remove your love for the idols or actors involved in their projects. Rather than continuously crediting them for sloppy work that you molded into a masterpiece, I would much prefer that Orbits begin taking credit for their own world-building skills that allowed Jaden to fine-tune his own. Because as evident from NINI'S, the fan theories are what breathes life into Jaden's otherwise lackluster storytelling. People like Digipadi, Mugung, Monotree and others are who you should thank for how well Luna was crafted. Not him. Now that I gave my perspective on that, I hope it would make my reaction to NINI'S album rollout make more sense. I've already seen Orbits begin to explain that the concept was great, it's very meta which is Jaden's style but the execution was terrible. This has almost made me want to toss my phone out the window but I'll settle for an eye roll instead. Nothing about this concept was great or smart. The initial idea is a very Disney Channel-esque way of approaching visual communication that has slowly been plaguing K-pop as of late. The idea that modhaus would need to be so on the nose to use AI art in order to contrast the use of human art later on so that you comprehend their stance, is to assume that you are a fucking idiot. Like there's no way to explain it. Jaden thinks that NINI'S audience have poor media literacy and needs the messages spoon-fed to you like you're a baby, like you shit your pants and go goo goo gaga for your mommy to clean you. Like he thinks y'all are dumbasses, that's so embarrassing. Not for you, for him. Orbits used to literally sit down and continue to theorize beyond the XX era, even knowing full well that the lore just wasn't there anymore because Jaden wasn't. Even though I didn't agree with most of the interpretations, it was clear to me that our fandom was capable of stringing together a narrative from nothing, which is an insanely impressive feat. Not many could say nor do that. Why would the fandom, who is great at analyzing, need to have a rollout that implements AI art in order to comprehend that you're using it to critique AI art later down the line? That's a terrible fucking concept and it feels disrespectful. It feels like you don't trust your audience to gather this message through other means that are not so on the nose. AI art is not capitalism, you absolutely do not need to participate in it in order to critique it. Quite the contrary. In fact, the simple act of using actual artists for the rollout would have immediately made the general audience bring up AI and point out how they're appreciating artists in an online climate that's increasingly being flooded with AI images. Not to mention, in using AI art with this strategy, you are still participating in the exploitation of artists' work, just in an annoying ironic way that once again, spells out that you think your audience is full of dumbasses who need their hand held through everything to comprehend stuff. Even beyond that, it's just an extremely surface level idea that I don't understand why anyone would even give him props for. I beg you, raise your standards please. If Jaden actually cared about artists being exploited, he wouldn't touch NFTs with a 10-foot, as the technology was long used to not only peddle terrible art that could only be compared to fast food but have also aided in artists' work being stolen with very little recourse on how to efficiently get it taken down. This, combined with the crypto manifesto of a free internet, creates this wild west mentality that those in the space have, which makes them feel entitled to your work. In other words, once it's on a blockchain, they own it and it's now theirs. They don't care. With this history in mind, why even use NFTs as a marketing tool and connect it to funding your artists? Oh, that's right, because that's the audience you actually want. Not K-pop stans. Crypto brothers. None of Jaden's actions, through how he handles both of his artists under his own company where he has all control, has shown that he cares about art. He does not care about the presentation, he does not care to invest into the presentation, and he will continue to do the bare minimum in relation to it. There's nothing that the man has done in these past few years to show that he has a hardline stance on AI art at all, even to be doing this commentary. In fact, in this bizarre jumble of words, the man doesn't even make mention of what the critique is and the morality interwoven into the heated discourse of its use. That's because it's not authentic. And apparently, AI was used in Heejin's music video as well, so like literally dude, what are you talking about? Also, in general, Jaden's meta style is the true thing that shows his lack of growth throughout everything. Dude, you're pushing 50. If you can't make a commentary without getting meta with it, you're just not good at visual communication. I'm crying. Like, these are the type of ideas you come up with when you're teen and you haven't experienced life enough to actually have some depth to your analysis. This dude has worked with several groups and his shit is still as deep as a goddamn puddle. Talking about some damn virtual angel with a literal virtual angel. You are embarrassing as fuck. Bye.